was in college, I used to spend my summer vacations in Dehra at my grandmother's place. I would leave the plains early in May and return late in July. Deoli was a small station about 30 miles away from Dehra. It marked the beginning of the heavy jungles of the Indian Terai. The train would reach Deoli at about 5 in the morning when the station would be dimly lit with electric bulbs and oil lamps, and the jungle across railway tracks would just be visible in faint light of dawn. They only had one platform only, and an office for the station master and a waiting room. That's it. The platform boasted a tea stall, a fruit vendor, and a few stray dogs. Not much else because the train stopped there only for 10 minutes before rushing it into the forest. Why it stopped at Deoli? I don't know. Nothing ever happened there. Nobody got off the train and nobody got in. There were never any coolies on the platform, but the train would halt there a full 10 minutes and then a bell would sound. And then guard would blow his whistle and presently Deoli would be left behind and then forgotten. I used to wonder what happened in Deoli behind the station walls. I always felt sorry for that little lonely place, for that nobody wanted to visit. Then I decided that one day I would get off the train at Deoli and would spend the day there just to please the town. I was 18, visiting my grandmother, and night train stopped at Deoli. Then a girl came down the platform selling baskets. It was a cold morning, and the girl had a shawl thrown across her shoulders. Her feet were bare and her clothes were old, but she was a young girl, walking gracefully and with dignity. When she came to my window, she stopped. She saw that I was looking at her intently, but at first, they are very strong, made of the finest cane. No, I said, I don't want a basket. We stood looking at each other for what seemed a very long time. And then she said, Are you sure you don't want this basket? Then I said, Alright, give me one, and took the one on the top and gave her a rupee, hardly daring to touch her fingers. As she was about to speak, the guard blew his whistle. She said something, but it was lost in the clanging of the bell and the hissing of the engine. I had to run back to my compartment. The carriage shuddered and jolted forward. I watched her as the platform slipped away. She was alone on the platform and she didn't move, but she was looking at me and smiling. I watched her until the signal box came in the way and then the jungle hit the station, but I could still see her standing there alone. I stayed awake for the rest of my journey. I couldn't rid my mind of the picture of the girl's face and her dark eyes. But when I watched Dara, the incident became blurred and distant, for there were other things to occupy my mind. It was only when I was making the return journey 2 months later that I remembered the girl again. I was looking out of her as the train drew into the station, and I felt an unexpected thrill when I saw her walking up the platform. I sprang off the footboard and waved to her. When she saw me, she smiled. She was pleased that I remembered her, and I was also pleased that she remembered me. We were both pleased, and it was almost like a meeting of old friends. She didn't go down the length of the train selling basket, but came straight to the tea stall. Her dark eyes were suddenly filled with light, We said nothing for some time, but we couldn't have been more eloquent. I felt the impulse to put her on the train there and then take her away with me. I couldn't bear the thought of having to watch her with distance of Deoli station. I took the baskets from her hand and put them down on the ground. This time I didn't forget her. She was with me for the remainder of the journey and the long after. All that year she was bright living thing for me. And when that college term finished, I packed in haste and left for Dara earlier than usual. My grandmother would be pleased at my eagerness to see her. I was nervous as the train drew into the Deoli because I was wondering what I should say to the girl and what I should do. But I was determined that I wouldn't stand helplessly before her, hardly able to speak or do anything about my feelings. The train came to Deoli, and I looked up and down the platform, but I couldn't see the girl anywhere. I opened the door and stepped off the footpath. I was deeply disappointed and overcome by a sense of foreboding. I felt I had to do something, and so I ran up to the station master and said, "Do you know the girl who was used to sell baskets here?" "No, I don't," said the station master. "And you had better get on the train if you don't want to be left behind." But I paced up and down the platform and stared over the railings at the station yard. All I saw was a mango tree and the dusty road leading into the jungle. Where did the road go? The train was moving out of the station, and I had to run up the platform and jump for the door of my compartment. Then, as the train gathered speed and rushed through the forest, I sat brooding in the front of the window. What could I do about finding a girl I had seen only twice, who had hardly spoken to me, and about whom I knew nothing, absolutely nothing, for whom I felt tenderness and responsibility that I had never felt before? My grandmother was not pleased with my visit after all, because I didn't stay at her place more than a couple of weeks. I felt restless and ill at ease, so I took the train back to the plains, meaning to ask further question to the station master at Deoli. But at Deoli there was a new station master. The previous man had been transferred to the another post within the past week. New man didn't know anything about the girl who sold baskets. I found the owner of tea stall, a small, shriveled man wearing greasy clothes, and asked him if he knew anything about the girl with the baskets. "Yes, there was such a girl here, I remember quite well," he said. "But she has stopped coming now." "Why?" I asked. "What happened to her?" "How should I know?" said the man. "She was nothing to me." And once again I had to run for the train. As the only platform receded, I decided that one day I would have to break the journey here, spend a day in the town, make inquiries, and find the girl who had stolen my heart with nothing but with a look from her dark, impatient eyes. With this thought, I consoled myself throughout my last time in the college. I went to Tehra again in the summer, and when in the early hours of the morning the night train drew into Deoli station, I looked up and down the platform for signs of the girl, knowing I wouldn't find her, but hoping just the same. Somehow I couldn't bring myself to break the journey. I think I was afraid to do this. I was afraid of discovering what really happened to the girl. Perhaps she was no longer in Deoli. Perhaps she was married. Perhaps she had fallen ill. In the last few years, I have passed through Deoli many times, and I always look out of the carriage window, half expecting to see the same unchanged face smiling up at me. I wonder what happens in Deoli behind the station walls, but I will never break my journey. It may spoil my game. I prefer to keep hopping and dreaming and looking out of the window up and down that lonely platform, waiting for the girl with the baskets. I never break my journey at Deoli, but I pass through as often as I can.